Welcome to Best Boys, a film podcast, an amateur film study podcast for the average Joe, the buffest buffs, and the cringiest bingers. I'm your host, JP, and I'm joined by my brother, professional Hollywood videographer,
Kory, with a story. Welcome to the only podcast where you can interpret the ending of a movie in 112 different ways and still come up with the same answer.
The meaning of life.
Exactly.
12. The answer is 12 to that question.
12? That was 42.
Yeah, I think it's 42. You're right.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
I was going to say, a Hitchhiker's Guide. I knew there was a number in that movie.
Yeah, it's like I've only seen that once, but that's like the only thing anyone I feel like remembers.
I've seen it a few times, but it was like a bunch of it. Many of the watches of it were like bits and pieces. But yeah, it's a great movie.
John Cusack's breakout
film. But all right, so we got some sci-fi going on today. We also got some period pieces, or a period piece, I guess. But we are back to the best points, and we are doing Stanley Kubrick today.
The Tooch himself.
The Cubes. I like to call them Cubes.
There's Stanley Tucci and Stanley Kuby.
Cubes and Tooch. So what is your personal experience, Kory? With the story?
The story is
with the cubes.
Stanley Kubrick's one of the things that one of the directors that obviously everybody has heard of, like in some form of another, and usually it's because of Clockwork Orange, 2001, and what's the other one? The other big one I'm missing that's around the same era.
Full Metal Jacket.
That one.
Clockwork Orange.
I said that one. There's another one.
Eyes Wide Shut.
No, not that one. There's another. Oh, it's just The Shining. The Shining.
The Shining.
That's like the probably. That's one of the more.
He's got so many.
He's
got so many of those though. Like it's everyone's seen so many of his films. Strangelove also is pretty big.
I remember Dad. I watched part of that with Dad growing up. I just remember I just remember the opening with like the bomb drop stuff. But it's just something that's just like it's always been there. Growing up, the only one I ever really remembered watching like from beginning to end was The Shining. But I had seen bits and pieces of 2001. But after watching 2001, I guess I've seen a lot less of it than I remembered. It's one of those things where it's like I always wanted to get back into, but never really did. But the one thing I always took away from what I did know from Kubrick was the symmetrical, slow zoom in stuff. And like one of my music videos I directed for Designer was the whole concept was just inspired by the people at Complex wrote it as Kubrickian slow zooms throughout the whole music video. And it's just like I really enjoy his shooting style and how he loves how he frames the scenes and everything like that. And it's watching these just put so much more of like, man, this has inspired so many things that have inspired me. And it all just kind of comes back, being able to see this early stuff, especially Barry Lyndon, because I've never seen anything. I had no idea what it was until we watched it.
So I growing up, I had seen Full Metal Jacket. I'm pretty sure I've seen Eyes Wide Shut. Growing up, I'd seen Spartacus. But then when I was in college, I saw Clockwork Orange. And then later, I think probably like 5 years ago, I saw The Shining. And then a few years ago, probably like 4 years ago, I saw Barry Lyndon. And Barry Lyndon is honestly we'll get to Barry Lyndon because we're going to talk about it today. But I am well versed in the Cubes, I would say. I've seen a lot of Cubes when I was young. I've seen it when I was old. And I didn't see 2001 until literally a couple of years ago for the first time. So this is the second time I've seen 2001 for this podcast. So it's good to have I honestly am glad. I think the second watch is really perfect because the story beats and you know what to expect. So I can really focus on details and more of like like the more of the nuts and bolts of filmmaking and stuff.
Mhm.
And so it was really good. It was really good. Barry Lyndon I've also seen only once. Clockwork Orange I've seen a fuck ton of times. Doctor
Oh
Strangelove
man,
I've seen like 5 times, 10 times maybe. Doctor Strangelove is also would be fighting for my favorite. The Shining, I'm just gonna say this in case. I mean, we might do it someday, but it's not my favorite of his. I think it's a little. It's good. It's a good horror movie, but it's a little overrated in my opinion.
I think why that one is so regarded is just for the cinema. It's just like most of his other stuff. The cinematography in this is really good.
And the
For
performances
the time. Yeah, yeah.
of the leads are really good. But yeah, I really want to see Paths of Glory. And then I want to see his early couple films, obviously. And then Lolita is supposed to be good, which I've never seen. But that's it.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think of how how future how shooting wise ahead of its time the stuff like 2001 being 1968 is. I'd be very curious to see like Spartacus or Past the Glory with them being in the late 50s and like early 60s, what that would be like, because he seems to be like a decade or two ahead of what everything else that's shooting for the era.
Yeah, it seems to be incredibly influential. And we're going to talk about specific directors, I have a feeling, as things come up. But you just wonder if certain things would have been made if it wasn't for Kubrick doing it first.
Yeah.
I see his influences just off the top of my head on George Lucas, on Steven Spielberg, on David Lynch, and those are completely different filmmakers. Maybe not Lucas and Steven Spielberg, but just like big movies, but also challenging films as well. And I think that's the sweet spot that Kubrick kind of resides in, is that it can make a big movie that is entertaining to a regular audience, but also be challenging artistically. And I think that is like my favorite thing for a film and just art in general, is just riding that, like being accessible, but also being challenging to that wide audience.
Oh, to go with that, the little bit of reading I did for this, he has no fear to just change to something else. He'll do whatever is like he's into at that time, which I love, rather than being like stuck with one like, oh, if you're getting a Kubrick movie, you know exactly what you're getting. Like he can vary into a little bit more comedy, a little like the sci-fi super heady stuff, but also like going into war period pieces and stuff like that. I like just how the range of what he does in his
That's true.
catalog is very that alone is super inspirational, because I feel like a lot of people get stuck in like, these are the movies that I make or whatever, but when you're challenging yourself to do a completely different genre to see if you can do it, and then you're doing it and still killing it, and or creating like the standard for certain how you do certain films is just beyond impeccable.
Yeah. And like this, to be able to have these like culturally important films, groundbreaking films, but also like they're big movies, they're Hollywood big movies, that do well. Maybe not Barry Lyndon, but the rest of these that we're talking about, Full Metal Jacket, The Shining, 2001, are like very are films that everybody will talk about, and everybody has seen. It's like Indiana Jones or Star Wars, but the difference between Indiana Jones and Star Wars is that this is like, I think, are creatively, emotionally challenging, and that's, I think, important to have in the mainstream sphere. It's cool that not everything needs to be like that, but I think it's cool to have that that kind of stuff and it be popular at the same time and accessible. But all right, I think that sums it up. Coob's up for me and how I feel about him and his stuff and my experience with him. So let's get down to some specifics. And first, we're going to talk about 1968's 2001: A Space Odyssey, since that is first in the order of these two. So, where do we begin with 2001? Honestly, the scale and the scope of a movie of this, of this time period, I've not seen. I've not seen anything. The special effects are pretty much. I think we always refer to Star Wars as like the watermark of
Yeah, I was just about to
amazing
say.
effects, and it's truly like this. I always use the walk so something can run, but that's what's happening here. Is like there's so many design cues that are used in Star Wars that come from this. And there's some, and then you can see though that there is like the bridge. Like there are also some things that remind me of older sci-fi as well. But you can see that it is a marked change to like realism, and it wants to feel like a real future, and versus some fantasy, like some Buck Rogers Atomic Age kind of fantasy, or Flash Gordon or something like that. Um, and that's what's so compelling about it, and it is done so well. And even to this day, like you can tell that some of the styles is kind of very 60s, but most of it, like the ship designs and the pods and
So
just the
much of it.
hallways that they're walking in, the picture I have up on the screen now, like that looks like it could be still like today.
I'm While you're talking, I'm playing the trailer to just like go like to watch the things as you're talking about them, and just the lighting even on just the models and the space models that are just floating in space, or like the big Ferris wheel at the first as like the International Space Station thing at first.
Yeah.
It just looks so real. Like it is real because practical effects, but it has this look that CGI still can't touch, and it just looks like some of these shots I think look better even than the first Star Wars, like in how well they're blended together, because they're more just like establishing shots, and when doing that, like having something more simple with the camera work and all that, you can focus way more on just like the perfection of it, rather than like Star Wars has so much motion and movement and action. Um, and it's just the models just look so real. Everything about this movie, I just can't get over. It's 1968. Um, it's so good, and all of it is practical. Like there's even like the big when he big thing at the end when they're Dave's getting sucked in through the thing. It's all in camera. That's all in camera practical effects. None of that is CGI of any kind. Um, and that's just what blows me away. The cinematography is just so ahead of its time. Like looks better than Alien. Looks better than Star Wars. This looks better than like everything for the next up like 10 to 15 years in terms of just like visual cinematic quality. Uh, I just like I think he was this. I think why this stands the test of time so much is just like nothing about this movie feels dated in any way. Um, it all feels like you could make this movie looking with this exact same aesthetic today, and it still would hit similarly.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think practical effects really go a long way. Miniatures really when used properly, really I keep saying really, they it really brings a lot more realism to the table than the
yeah,
CG ships and things like that. I mean, now we're getting at a better place with CG, but there's something about seeing the miniatures, how it holds up, because you can get the lighting exactly the way you want it. It's real lighting, and you can shoot whatever way you want around it. It's just like once you have really well designed models, I think that it adds so much to the immersion and feel of it, and then along with the sets and the costumes and everything, there's just a level of immersion and attention to detail, and just forward thinking about the future and whatnot. I was just looking at the budgets of
I think this was 10 million to do 2001.
Star Wars.
Um,
The first one was 11 million. 2001 was 10 and a half.
yeah,
So there's
which
only
in
$500,000 difference in budget. The Star
however
Wars
with
was 9 years
yeah,
later.
so with inflation, Kubrick would have had a little bit more of a bigger budget, but even to today's inflation, I looked it up. That 10.5 million to make this movie would have been equivalent to about 80 million today. uh, which is still like for what it is, 80 million's not a lot of money to make something this good, like this high end. I mean, if you could do it now, for sure, you could make this for 80 million, but I don't know if it would
I mean,
be as
it
good.
takes a lot. I don't know why, but I think that people shy away from it because it takes so much more work to physically create all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and the set, I mean, set design is going to be set design and costumes. Like that's going to be what it
Yeah.
is. But and then I think the big difference with Star Wars is when, like when you are in the cantina or something, and there's just like a million people in costumes, different kinds of costumes. Like that's when I feel like the money starts adding up, along with all the like half of Star Wars is like miniature space stuff.
But
At the
what
ships.
this has that Star Wars doesn't with the ships is all of the ship interiors have all of these like actual practical working screens that are all displaying things because there's no CGI overlaying. Versus Star Wars is more just like glowing buttons and switches with occasional holograms, which I feel like is cheaper to do
They have
than
screens, but they don't
building.
have quite as they're not
They're
like
not they're
straight
not
up
playing like motion
monitors.
thing. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
Um,
these are playing like actual video feeds that are switching and changing depending on what the buttons the dude's press like Dave is pressing and or like any other crew people are. And all that stuff like that back then especially like you're putting in a CRT like a tube TV into every single one of those and like that is so expensive. It's so attention to detail like you're saying it's incredible. And you have so many practical lights from that to play off of to keep the realism and everything. And ah, man, I get it so much. I can't believe that I haven't seen this in its entirety until now. But I get the drooling over it. It's just so for the time, it's so insane.
yeah. It's just, so ahead of its time, and I do think about the graphic design and stuff. That is on the monitors and things. It all like really still looks cool and still looks like um it holds up and artistically today. That would I think that a lot of that looks good. The fonts and the way that the presentations are on the screen, like it's none of it looks dated or out of fashion. It's pretty amazing. It's just really amazing. And then I think now that we can probably talk about how the movie is structured, which I think is another big difference. In it's kind of like a movie within a movie, or is it like three movies? It's kind of like the short
Well,
prologue, and then we have like a
yeah.
second kind of prologue about that's kind of how this mission came to be. I mean, truly, if you think about it, the story is three acts about this monolith thing, I guess. Um,
It
but
almost felt episodic, like a TV show, in how it breaks it up because at first there's little correlation from one to the other. Like the transition with the ape bone to the spaceship, like you take the monolith away from that opening and that still works. That transition of just the dawn of man and like where we started to where we are now. Um, but the but where you go from there, you don't really until they get to explaining like or they find the monolith in the second part. It feels like a completely different thing. Like it's not really tied to the first part until that point. And then the same with the third. It keeps waiting until the very end of each section to bring this monolith in. And in each time, it only gives you just like a slight little bit of information, even about what the monolith is or what its purpose is. Um,
so there's a lot of mystery around the
mm,
monolith. You're not really get any definitive answers of what it means. Is it God? Is it it's everything, it's nothing. It's the
is it
meaning of
aliens?
life. Is it aliens? um you don't really get a definitive answer, and so the mystery of what is the monolith kind of pulls you through, and you never truly get satisfied in it. You just kind of get this like experience at the end, and you kind of are meant to interpret it how you will.
Mm,
um so the beginning of the film opens. We are in the prehistory. We're near the dawn of time, and there are early um, humans, ape people, evolved past regular apes, but but not
hang out
quite
in gangs.
human yet. And they are, you see like two tribes or two groups, and they're fighting over like a water hole, and the one tribe kicks the other tribe's ass, and the one tribe that gets its ass kicked finds this monolith, and it's hanging out around this monolith, and the monolith, somehow we were meant to infer that the 8 people learned how to use tools from hanging around this monolith, and then they use those tools to beat the shit out of the tribe that beat them up previously.
Yeah, it's some real Jets versus Sharks shit.
Yeah, it's true. They sing and dance and everything.
Yeah.
And so that's how it opens, and then it cuts to the second section of the film. And I wanted to just talk about the music, the use of the classical selections, which are songs that you hear in like a million billion things, but I feel like it's because of this movie that you do hear them.
100%.
Like Canon and D, I think is one of them. I think is one of them.
I feel like this is definitely the first movie to do that. Like, in various parts of the movie where they have that, like, it's like a chorus of vocals just all slowly, like, just like all high pitched, just like, oh, like all slowly fading
Oh
up. Like,
yeah,
how
yeah.
like the modern like horror
New
movie,
movies
like,
still do that.
use it all the time.
Yeah, new
But like, it was
movies.
so cool. Seeing it at the time, or seeing it in this movie, because I'm just like, man, this is what modern people do to ramp up tension. And it's like, this is just doing it first. It's super just with like everything else, it's ahead of its time, but it just, I don't know, he's this guy, the Coobs, he just knows what he's doing so well.
So
But I was sorry, good.
I mean, I was just gonna move on to the next part of the movie. If you had anything else you wanted to say about the prehistory or the music.
Oh, I was gonna bring up that that opening is like 30 minutes of the Dawn of Man stuff, which is, I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked how long it was, because I just remember the bone throwing in the air scene from seeing
they
it in
could
the
have
past.
easily told. You can easily tell that in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and they let it run long ass takes for like 30 minutes. And it's beautifully shot. It's honestly, I can't tell if it's on location or on a stage with matte paintings.
I
Like,
was
it's
thinking that too. Is that a
good.
matte paint? I kept trying to figure out if that was a painting in
Yeah.
a set or if that was a on location. Thought the same thing.
You could tell me either way and I'd believe it.
Just the lighting is kind of interesting, how it's done. I was leaning to the set because of how the lighting was at times. Like you could, like, there was like an orange glow, like a sunset kind of glow, but it was exaggerated. But
Like
that could have just been
daylight.
they could have just been brought lights out on the location, so I don't know. But so that half hour on that, and then the second section, which is also pretty long,
It's about an hour.
is a lot of it is dedicated to it's to setting up the third part of the movie, and it kind of connects the monolith through line through each of these stories. And it's about the Dr. Floyd, who he apparently works for. It says on the wiki that he's the chairman of the United States National Council of Astronautics, and he's traveling to the moon to a base that is run. It seems to be run by Americans, but there's also a Russian base there as well. And but so much of this time is dedicated to showing us the technology.
Yes.
The future technology, and like how they're on planes, the space planes, and we have food in boxes, and how everyone, the zero gravity, all these zero gravity gags. I would say, I don't know how else you want to call them, like little gags with look, shit's floating. Oh, I'm walking on the ceiling.
Yeah, the whole second part of this movie just feels like the production team just pooping on everyone else's movies around them. Like, you wish you could do this. You can't do this? Oh, well, we did it.
Yeah, and special effects are pretty. Practical special effects are pretty crazy. And it's flexing. And even today, like, some of that stuff I'm sure is really difficult. In the next section, there's one in particular that I'm like, how do they do that?
Yeah, yes, I have the same thing. Part 3 or not part 3, but like the last part of this movie, I couldn't tell if I knew how it worked, which is upsetting to me because I obsess over that stuff.
Yeah, so here's another thing, and here's a factoid I did write down about this film. Apparently, Kubrick wanted nothing about the production to come out about this film. He wanted it all to be secret. They burned and destroyed almost all the props. They and all the
Wow.
blueprints, production notes, all destroyed for this film because he wanted because he kept saying that anytime there was a big sci-fi movie, that all these other TV shows and shittier movies will use the props, and you'll see those props coming up in other sci-fi shit for like the next decade. And he didn't want everyone ripping off his movie and watering down the aesthetic, which I think is genius. Because that does happen. If you know your movie's gonna be like game changing to the genre, then you know it's gonna be imitated after that. And it's very influential on Star Wars, Alien, a billion other things. But those are the two big ones that come in the next decade. And it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. The man had foresight and vision, and it's very wild to see how much like power that he had over his works and how they still made fuckloads of money. This movie made $146 million at the box office.
Oh my god, on a $10 million budget.
Yes.
That's it. Wait, so it's about almost 8 times conversion from then to now. So 140 times 8. That's got to be like
$1 billion.
Got to be almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion. Yeah.
Oh my god, 140 times 8. Yeah, $1.12 billion that would have made the equivalent of in today's, which is insane.
Yeah. And it's think about what kind of movie this is. This is not, a Marvel movie. This isn't even a Star Wars movie. Like it's more challenging than that.
It's extremely slow. Like not in a bad way, but it just is. It's very
like
slow
paced. It is almost to an unnerving. This movie is unnerving. This movie makes you anxious about what's about to happen. You know that it's the music and the way that it's shot. It's telling you that there's something bad at work, ominous at least. And we find out late, as the movie goes on, there is something bad happening, but the monolith is just scary, and we're in awe of it. It makes the humans feel small with all their technology, which it is interesting that it does set up all this like, oh, look at all of this shit that humanity can do now, and then we're still kind of in awe of this monolith and what is it doing and what kind of power does it have? It's a very mystical, supernatural thing.
And at the end, man reaches monolith and doesn't have the brain capacity to even understand what the hell it is, and instead you're just taken on a fucking acid trip.
It's left to like interpret. Yeah, in the end, when Dave gets sucked into whatever some light thing.
Yeah,
seem to be transported, but we'll get to that. Yeah. I don't know why when I think about this movie, everybody talks about the next section, but I always think about this part with all the plane and the airport, the spaceport, and like the video phone calls. It's like, honestly, that is one thing that is maybe dated about the film, is like, how much time spent on video calls, and like we have cell phone. Like he didn't have the foresight that we'd have that in our pockets instead of these booths. But other than the video calls, everything else still holds up. But do you think any of that? Do you think? Go ahead.
One thing I thought was silly and did not hold up though is that when Dr. Floyd, is that his name?
Yeah, Dr. Floyd.
And when he's on his way to the moon and he's eating his shit, he, instead of just picking up each carton with a straw,
I thought the same thing. A
whole tray and just sips from each one. I was like, that's stupid. No one would do that.
I guess if you want to like mix flavors, like you want to mix your mashed potatoes.
pick him up, though. You
Yeah,
don't need
I
to just
agree.
lift it.
That was awkward.
Or
They're just like
or else just
funny
mention
things
being
like, "Uh-oh, my
yeah,
tray's floating."
yeah,
And the stewardess and him like look at each other and laugh, like stuff like that. It is pretty much gags, special effects
yeah.
gags. But they
Meanwhile,
still
Tarkovsky's just like, "Ugh, popcorn flick, terrible."
yeah, so we're gonna definitely devote a little section to that. So I want to. I guess we should keep moving. But this section is so interesting to me. And this is like the one of the. It's just a bunch of special effects, like nonstop. And just showing you this and showing you this and here's this and a future, like all these future things. Apparently, the that when Kubrick wanted to write the screenplay, he wanted to find a science fiction author to work with. So Arthur C. Clarke, he linked up with apparently a science fiction writer at the time. So his short story, The Sentinel, is what inspired the script. But they work closely together on it, which I think that is another important thing. Is it gives it a sense of science, the like cutting edge sci-fi, with the vision, the aesthetic, and visual, you know, eye or whatever you want to say that Kubrick has, and I think it's a perfect match. Because I think if the wrong person, aesthetic is applied to the story, it's just not nearly as interesting, like in terms of how everything looks and whatnot. And also the special effects, being able to apply all that
Yeah.
and the cinematography.
I feel like that's got to start from him too. Just like, all right, well, this is how we want to shoot this, and I want the person has to come from a ladder and then walk horizontally across into the background. It's like that has to be the thing, and then we trickle down from there. It's just like knowing the shots and everything right from the get go.
Yeah, and the next
Like,
movie
no.
we're gonna talk about, like the how the shots are set up, is definitely super interesting. The cinematography and whatnot. It's not to this level with the special effects, but just simple things. I was curious and I wanted to talk to you about. So yeah, we should move on to the next part, and this is the part that everybody knows. I would say they probably learned about it. They've probably seen some cartoon do a redo of it for an episode, or some kind of other show, reference it. But what you have two astronauts, and they are on a ship that is headed to Jupiter. There are 3 other astronauts that are in cryosleep, and which is a thing that is featured in a million sci-fi movies since then, especially. And they're with an AI named HAL 9000, and it controls everything on the ship. And it's real, they're able to talk to him and whatnot, and reason with it, and it's never ever messed up before. It's never made a mistake. And then they're in the middle. The 2 of them stay up to like kind of watch over everything while they're on their journey, and the other 3 stay asleep. And basically, the computer thinks that something's broken, a sensor is broken, and it's not. And they go out to go fix it, and they see that it's working fine. And then they take the data and they report it to Mission Control, and they find this. They say it's working fine, and then the AI is really insisting that something's wrong, and they secretly talk about maybe we should deactivate it. Like it's never been wrong before, but just to be safe, we should deactivate it and see. We'll check on it later. And the AI is able to read their lips when they which I think is really clever. That they go to try to talk in a place where they think the AI can't see them, and the AI can read their lips and knows that they're going to disconnect it, and and wants to save its life, and is self-interested. It's self-aware thing, and murders all the astronauts except Dave, and then Dave is but eventually able to shut it down. So what? This is like a little mini horror, short story, short film in the middle of the movie. It connects everything together, but at the same time, it kind of just really stands on its own. and I think it's super duper interesting. And this section's probably what, an hour of the movie.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes for the opening, an hour for part 2, an hour for this part.
Or that's counting the end though, with all the because the trippy shit
Yeah,
is
that's
like 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
yeah. I mean that's what I mean. It's an hour
So
for
like
like
the actual like just nuts and bolts horror space story is only about another half hour, right? Well, how
yeah.
then
I
it's like
it all
45
went way
minutes.
yeah. It all went way quicker than I thought it would because like I was saying before, pretty much all I remembered growing up from seeing this movie was the ape bone throwing the bone up shot, and then just the stuff with Hal, and I didn't even remember any of the stuff in the middle part. And so when I realized, like watching this, is like, yeah, this last part is very short in comparison to just like it's the equivalent of a feature length movie just at the end of a movie, condensed down to the end of the movie. But the this one, I will say, not the weakest of the 3 parts because I think it's the coolest, but this has the most like things on it where it's like with the lip
What?
syncing, like makes me feel a little
What?
about.
Yeah, I don't know what "earn" means.
Yeah, I just
Use your
so like
words.
in today's thing, if you have a line that's like, yes, it's a supercomputer that's never made a mistake, that's a clearly on the nose. All right, well, it's gonna make a mistake. So back then, that might have been not
Well,
as
they
on the
didn't
nose.
say that at first, though. They didn't say that until he was acting weird, and then they were like, "Oh, maybe he's
Oh
made a
no, no, they
mistake."
they they do a whole point when they're introducing the whole HAL 9000 thing, and he's explaining himself to the crew or whatever. Yeah, they bring it up like constantly in the beginning, and then he
Perfect
makes the mistake.
operational record. Yeah, that is what they
Yeah,
say. Is perfect. They say that several times. That doesn't
and
really bother me, but I guess you could see that it's for like
well, yeah,
foreshadowing.
back then it probably would have been fine, but like for now, it's like, oh, well, that's definitely where it's gonna go. And then with the lip syncing thing, why did Dave make a point to have Hal spin the pod around so the window was facing Hal instead of just keeping it the way it was? That's what I was like, why is that other than just for the plot? It didn't make sense.
I don't know. I have no idea unless that was the only way they could get
Mhm.
in because they didn't turn it until before, right?
Like, yeah, it was so what happened is like the window's facing Hal. They walk in, they turn it around, open the door, they get in the pod, and then he has Hal shut the door and spin it back around for the window facing back to facing Hal. And he didn't need to do that last part. He could have just stopped and they would have been fine.
I think
And
they just didn't think about the lip reading thing at all, and that was just supposed to be
yeah,
like how outsmarted them. Like they thought they were being clever, but they weren't being clever,
yeah.
and like the computer was smarter. Um, there was a couple things. There are a couple things that I thought was strange. Toward later on when after everyone's dead and Dave's trying to get back into the ship, it's just like the weird manual things to get back into the ship, which there totally would be, but then it's like he's in the vacuum of space for like a little bit, and like why doesn't he have his helmet on already? And
He didn't. They make a point. There's a throwaway line Hal says, and it's like, "You're gonna die out there. You didn't bring your space helmet."
oh
Uh,
yeah,
And but so I looked it up, and you wouldn't die immediately if you're just in space for like that little bit of thing, you'd be fine if you're holding your breath and stuff. But the minute you open your mouth or anything, like it's gonna suck all the air out, your lungs are gonna explode, and you're gonna swell up. But there's like a little bit of like a brief like couple seconds moment where you could pull that off. Obviously, this is a perfect scenario where Dave does pull that off. But I
and
get you
there was
though.
something else that I'm forgetting now about that that was just like weird. That was weird for me. It's like, oh well, how did Hal not think that Dave was going to be able to, like, he knows that Dave can get back into the ship. I guess he just thought since Dave didn't have a helmet
Space helmet, yeah.
that it just
That he was
wasn't going to be
fucked.
able to. But yeah, that I was like, he's just going to come back in and then kill you anyways, and then everyone's dead. How does that save the mission?
Yeah.
But that I
Yeah,
don't.
it makes
None of
sense.
that really bothers me though. I think it still all works.
Yeah,
Uh,
especially for the time, like, cause all that stuff was so new, and no one really cared about the accuracy of space and anything back then.
and this was very much trying to though. Like
Yeah,
that, it is aiming to try to be as real as possible.
I mean, for like the average layman who's watching the
And
movie, they're
they
just
don't know nearly
oh
as much about it, and science
yeah.
isn't as progressed and whatever. I understand that. It definitely is very, very forward thinking though for
Mm.
1968. Um,
Do you know what the section right after that where he's floating in the thing, deactivating the higher brain function stuff? I always only come back to how South Park mashed Akira with
oh yeah,
Hal,
what are you doing,
but
Kat?
but it's
I
a giant
literally said
Akira
it
monster.
outside. I said it
Yeah,
out loud while I was watching. What are you
I did.
doing,
Yeah, same thing.
Kat?
That's so funny. Oh, it's so
It's the
funny.
Trapper Keeper episode, I
Yep,
believe.
yep. He
It's a
uses stem
very early
cells.
one. We watched those because we had the DVDs. We watched those first like 5, 6, 7 seasons like a million times.
Oh, I know. That was so cool.
Uh,
I love watching South Park when we were younger because we're too young to be
yeah, but
watching
like
it.
those
Parents
episodes don't really
scared.
hold. They hold up the least though. I think.
Really? I
Yeah, the
like the
old
old
ones
episodes.
definitely hold up the worst. Not in terms of like an offensive way. Just like they're not. I don't think they're as funny as they used to be. They rely more on like dick and fart jokes, which are
Yeah.
still funny at times. But all right. So everyone's dead, including Hal. This is honestly the coolest part, and for me, as far as the set design, this little ship, the interior looks really really cool. Everything's lit up. Um, there's lights everywhere and handles and little doodads and things. The
So, like the
screens
little
again really cool. We talked
space
about
pod.
the space pods are cool. They look realistic and they have little grabby arms. Oh, one thing though that this movie in the special effects department does not have, and it kind of bothered me, there are no thrusters on anything. Like they're there, but they don't turn on. Did you notice that? The pods never have rockets on the back. Like they do have a section where they would be where it is, but there's no special effect with like fire or anything.
Oh gosh.
When the one
Yeah.
thing's landing earlier in the film, the one ship, it's just like there's no thrusters happening. It's just moving on its
Gotcha.
own.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but yeah, that is true.
It did bother me. But it's stuff like that though I can forgive because of how, like Star Wars added thrusters.
Yeah.
They had thrusters on all the ships. But yeah. So then, I mean, we can talk about the ending now if you'd like, because I think this section is the most basic in terms. It's a pretty straightforward sci-fi, like pulp sci-fi horror story. And it's contained, it's short, and it works. And then once it's done, it turns into the exact opposite of straightforward sci-fi story, and it goes off the rails into a very abstract, psychedelic, metaphorical sequence. And then just the fact that this is in a movie that made $1 billion in today money is just crazy.
Yeah,
It's like David Lynch. It's like Eraserhead taped to the end of Star Wars.
I still don't even know what the fuck I watched at the end, like with the
old man and the baby, and
the old once because it's like he goes through the little like teleport light streak thing, and like that's all fine and dandy, and then he's going through that for a good 10 minutes straight.
Yes,
maybe.
just lights, just random lights for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and just cutting back to his face in awe. And
it's called the Stargate sequence.
Yeah, and then they're just showing all these like inverted color like mountain landscapes, like desert mountain landscape stuff. And I am just like, oh, is he on a new planet? Did he get teleported? And then he sees like, and then I was like, oh, are they gonna do? Is this where Interstellar? Clearly, Interstellar got so much from this movie, stole half of the ideas from this movie, way more than I realized. And I'm like, okay, so it's just like he made it back to Earth and he's just old now. It's like it's a real like fucking 2000s Planet of the Apes scenario, and he's at home and everyone's apes. But no, it's then he becomes the person that he's like seeing, and then he just keeps jumping in age. And the monolith comes back, and he's a baby. And then the baby's the size of the planet.
I don't know what like the popular interpretations of it are. I probably should have looked at some before this, but I just kept thinking to myself that it made me think about that life is short, and that you're the circle of life, and that you are, you are a grown man now, and then you're going to be an older man, and then you're going to be on a very old man, and you're going to be on your deathbed, and then you die. And then like and like he's like reaching to the monolith as he's like dying, and then it like cuts
Yeah.
back, and it's like the next generation. It's a new baby. The baby being the star child or whatever is what they call it. And it's just like this giant baby kind of floats over the earth. No idea where that's gonna go. But it's such a cool, like, they don't really answer anything about the monolith. It doesn't really kind of wrap
Yeah.
up in a conventional way. We just know that Dave lives and goes into this unknown, and then the unknown is the kind of visual short sequence that we get.
The way I could think I took it, it was like he reaches the monolith, and instead of being teleported, like while that lighting the light streak, that's whatever you called it, the Stargate moment.
Yeah.
Uh, I took it as him, because the beginning it's they say that when the monkey touches the monolith, he learns tools, and whenever they touched the monolith on the moon, it activated it, and then started that big thing. So I'm wondering, like, when he goes to touch it with his pod, if that's just like the rushing of like the infinite knowledge of the universe hitting his brain, and our human brains not being like developed enough to be able to interpret it. It comes as those streaks and everything, and then it's just a representation of like, we in the grand scheme of the universe and infinite knowledge, we are still babies in it. Like, we have the mind of an infant in comparison, or a fetus. That's kind of how I took it without like reading. I haven't read any other interpretations either. But I have no I fucking idea if that's even close to what it's going for.
So I'm just like cruising through, and actually, it looks like I was not far off. That it's an allegory. It's been described as an allegory of human conception, birth, and death. In part, this can be seen through the final moments of the film, which are defined by the image of the star child and an in utero fetus that draws on the work of Lennart Nilsson. The star child signifies a great new beginning and is depicted naked and ungirded, but with its eyes wide open. So yeah, I think I did read that before, and that's from Wikipedia. And then like I'm reading some stuff there about Nietzsche, and how that man is kind of like the link, the bridge between ape and the Ubermensch, which is kind of like the next step in human evolution. Whether I don't know if you want to call it mutants or whatever. New types is in Gundam is what they call them. But I think that's interesting, and just like in terms of space and technology, like that's how humanity is going to evolve, I think, past its current form. It is very interesting to think about those kinds of things. It's very, it's a big kind of meaning of life kind of thing. But the ending definitely made me think about how short life feels, and the older you get, the faster it moves in the cycle of it. And when you're a kid, you think that 50 years is an incredibly long time, and once 20 years later, you realize that you're halfway there, and how fast that was. And it's only getting faster the more you have a broader concept of big lengths of time. When you're a kid, you've never experienced 20 years, but now that you're 30, you have a concept of what 20 years feels like.
Age and time accelerate exponentially.
Yes, and that scares me.
Yeah, honestly, it's whether it's perceived that way because we have more stuff to do as adults, and you're just busier, and so time flies quicker, or as a kid you're just constantly doing things you didn't want to do, and so everything felt way longer.
Well,
But
I think about when I first started working, and like it's 8-hour work day, and it felt like an eternity. Like and then like as time went on, it's quicker and quicker, and now a work day goes in a second. It feels like a week. It feels like weeks go fast. It's the weekend before I know it. Just the routine. I think the routine is another thing that makes things go fast. You do the same thing every day. It's kind of like when you drive. It's always faster on the way back on a drive than it's faster on the way there, because your brain's like has it like mapped out more, and you're more on autopilot, and it kind of like the time will literally goes faster in your brain. Time is a wild thing, man. It's very like it's all about how it's perceived and
Yeah,
like
and it's all it's relative to the
it,
person too, which I think is
yes, yes. Like we have way of tracking it, with clocks. So we know that it is countable. But when you take that clock away, and like an hour can feel like an eternity, an hour can feel like a second. Um, but yeah,
I always think about things like in basketball when you're like jumping up for a layup, just like that hang time, you feel like you're in the air for seconds, but really you're in the air for like half a second.
I think that's where the idea of
That,
bullet time came from. Is
yeah,
I
exactly.
bet. Um, But yeah, we could really dig into. I don't even know if we're even in the realm of the philosophy of this movie anymore. But I think that's what this movie kind of brings up is big questions. And I think movie we referenced Hitchhiker's Guide, and I think that it's kind of not maybe not memeing on this particularly, but in that kind of sci-fi has to be big and ponder the future and the big and provide the technology in the future will provide answers that will uplift humanity or in sentient beings.
Mm.
But yeah, there's religious. I think you can there's religious aspects to the film, spiritual, also with in terms of science and evolution. And I think that's what's cool is the crossroads between. And then we've named how many sci-fi properties, and I know that in sci-fi literature, that there's tons of examples, as I'm sure by this time. But in terms of film and television, that we've never really seen anything like this. And
Yeah, because
I would love
everyone
to
just knows
know if
what.
there is other things like this before this. Like please, if there's anyone listening that knows. But it just seems that's so special. And Interstellars and Annihilation and Ex Machina and Blade Runner 1 and 2 and Aliens and even I don't know, or just Event Horizons, and I mean it even bleeds into mainstream shit like Marvel with sci-fi stuff and whatever. Like it's not just gonna be in the art realm. When something's this big and important, it affects everything. Like we said, how many times do we've watched movies like these classic movies, and we've seen
Mm,
them like riffed on in a cartoon we watched as kids, or
mm.
something like that. Like it permeates pop culture, and it changes art and moves things forward, or at least opens things wider. But yeah, I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Anything else with 2001?
I think I'm either gonna get a T-shirt or a bumper sticker that just says Tarkovsky's a hater.
Oh yeah,
Colon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, thank you. So let's talk about comparing Solaris to 2001. We said in our Tarkovsky episode that he notoriously hates this movie because he thinks that it is a lot of like
All style, no
it's all
substance.
style, no substance. Thank you. That is, it's all these effects, it's all these gags, and it's a lot of, I think it's too vague and isn't specific enough, maybe like in its metaphors. Like in Solaris, it's vague, but like the metaphors are, kind of not obvious, but um, pretty clear. Whereas this is like the ending is kind of vague, really vague and open to like purposely open to interpretation. And it just makes the vision just all like it's all about the way it looks, and then you just kind of assign your own meaning to the randomness and psychedelia of it, or I don't know. I think that's kind of a part of it. Solaris, I think, is a good movie, and I think it is influential and also on some of the movies that we've mentioned today, like Blade Runner 2049, is one that comes to mind. It's just being more thoughtful and ponderous, and that you don't need to rely on the special effects. It's like as long as the story is good, it can have that big scope. But at the same time, this movie is good, and I think this movie does make you feel a lot, and there's a reason why it does resonate with so many people. And I definitely think I like 2001 better.
100% like 2001 better. I think that while I think Solaris, it's cool. It's boring, especially compared to this. This takes the slow because this has those slow burn elements. There's so many long shots on this. I mean, the opening before the monolith even shows up in part one, we're just watching monkeys, just yell and feed each other and eat like, and it drags it out. And each shot's like very long. But it's just this is done in a lot. This is done. Maybe it's because it's in a way that is having that little bit of that style and popcornness
There
to
is
it
the
that
special
reels
effects
it
though
in.
are a significant part of the film. Like
Yeah,
all the
I mean,
ships
they're
flying and all the zero gravity stuff, and pretty much the second section is so much of that.
yeah, but but it adds to the immersion. It's not just effects to have effects. Like I feel like that whole middle thing straps you into, all right, this is how this world works. So when the third one comes, you are aware and ready for everything and anything.
I still think it's interesting. And even if when things become dated, it's still interesting as a time capsule to see like 1968 really kind of accurate interpretation of the future. But at the same time, I can see that there is an argument that it's indulgent and maybe takes away from the story of the film. And it does make the movie significantly longer. And
But yeah, we didn't say this. I texted you this. This is a 90-minute movie stretched out to 2.5 hours. For sure, but it's done tastefully.
And yeah, and I don't know. I do like it. I think there is maybe there's some comparison I would like to make with Barry Lyndon. I think more so, with some of the way things are shot. But so I'll say that. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're both good movies, but this is just, it hits a little bit harder. I think because it's just well rounded because of its effects and budget. And a sci-fi movie is enhanced by effects more than I think almost any other genre, because it's pretty vital to the immersion of the setting.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to score 2001: The Space Odyssey?
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
I'm gonna give it a 5.
Oh wow. Another perfect.
Well, I mean, it's considered one of the best movies of all time.
It is. It is true.
Literally every single reviewer that I follow, all give it a 5.
Interesting.
5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5.
I mean, it is a 5. The reason I was at 4.5 was just because of the little hiccups that I talked about, and that it is a 90-minute movie, just stretched out.
But I think honestly, the second part of it, the stretched out part, adds so much anxiety and feeling. Like there isn't I am on edge when I watch this movie.
Yeah, that's why I like this over Solaris. Solaris is just people walking around and talking, and this is engaging. You want to pay attention because you don't know where it's going, and especially in the whole second part of the movie. And that's why it holds. Yeah, it's a 5. It is a 5. It's a damn near perfect film, but it is so for what it's done for the world and everything around it.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's like influenced so many other 5s.
Yeah,
it's a 5 too, and I do try to evaluate things as is. I don't really try to increase score because of impact, but it is when you consider that like it was a 5 to them 20 years ago, and just because some very very minor things have not aged the best, I just don't think it's enough for me to take it away. It's just like amazing what they were able to do in 1968, and it's like obvious why this film has such an impact to this day. This is one of those movies they send into space to show aliens,
yeah. This is what we thought that you guys would be.
Well, you'd be. Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess they're the monolith and all this.
Yeah.
But it's definitely this deep philosophical things, while also being entertaining at a basic level, and that is all. Like in my opinion, is some of the best art. It should be able to do that. But all right, Cubes, hit them with a 5. Can we make it 10? When we move on to
An even
bury,
longer movie.
and yeah, an even longer movie. So this movie, let me switch over
I'm
on
not gonna
my
lie.
screen.
I thought real quick. I thought Barry Lyndon, because of the length, and I knew there was gonna be an intermission point in the middle. I was hoping that like, oh, maybe it's 3 hours because the Seven Samurai, it was like a 15-minute intermission in the middle. Nope, it's like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I said the same thing to Riss. I hit the 10-second forward button, and it just like immediately was at the next title card.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, this is the second time I've seen this film. I loved it the first time. I was incredibly intimidated by it. Um, somebody said 4 hour or 3.5 hour period piece, 18th century period piece, made in the 70s.
It's 3.5 hours. I thought it was only 3.
3 hours. I'm sorry, 3 hours. 3 hours and 4 minutes, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Made in the 70s. I would have been terrified to see this. It's gonna be boring. It's gonna be awful. I'm not gonna get into this. But the only thing that made me dive in was our boy Stanley Kubrick. Because I've seen so many of his films and I've liked every single one. I think those are like hot off of me watching Strangelove for like the 10th time in a row, and I just watched maybe Clockwork Orange again or something like that. I think I will even watch The Shining for the first time. And I'm like, well, what else has he got? And I think maybe one of them, YouTuber or something, suggested Barry Lyndon, and I put it on, and it was just I say this to Riss, this movie is a page turner. Like the way you read a book that you're so into and you just keep going, you can't put it down. You just want to keep going forward because it's like a book is long. A book takes days to read, or at least a day if you read it from sun up to sundown.
Years for some people.
Yeah, with poor attention. Um,
Me.
but a movie can have that kind of, when it's extremely long, can kind of have that. And this is just like I wanted it to just last forever. It felt like a show, like a prestige show that I really was into, and I wanted to watch the whole season, 10 episodes in one sitting. So yeah, this is like the length is not anything. The length is not it does not hinder this movie in any way whatsoever, and I can't believe I would have ever the me that before I watched this movie can't believe I would be saying that.
Hey, all I'm gonna say is after doing a couple weeks ago, Stalker, which was 2 hours 40 something, or not Stalker, Solaris, which is 2 hours 47 minutes, and Stalker, which is 3 hours and 30 minutes. This I'm ready for whatever 3 hours. I've been prepped on just watching.
Yeah, like Stalker was a
slowest
good like
movies possible.
Ran and
3 hours.
Stalker and Seven Samurai. Those are all good long movies. But when you get hit with a like not great long movie, or just sometimes with like I was not in the right mood for Drive My Car, and its length just crushed me a little bit. The Batman was very hard for me because of the length, but like this, nothing at all.
Yeah.
This is maybe of all of these long movies we've watched recently, this is the easiest one to watch.
Yeah, I think it's because it's fun. Like it's not depressing. Like the second half is,
yeah, you're right.
But it's not in a depressing
It's not
way.
brooding.
Makes sense. Like, yeah, like there's, and for me, what kept me going was honestly the narrator having the little bit of like cheeky silliness into the narration.
His style.
Yeah, because it just set it up. It was like, okay, this is not a boring period piece. This is more like not Princess Bridey, but it just has that like. The narrator sounded like we used to have a computer game that was like fairy tales shit when we were kids, like elementary school, and it sounded so much like that narrator.
So I think I'm gonna blow your mind. I believe the guy who plays the narrator is the guy who plays Alfred in the '90s Batman movies.
Really? Wow.
I'm not 100% on that. I gotta double check. No, I think I'm wrong.
But
his voice is very similar.
In our hearts and in our minds.
Oh man, I'm usually good about that. But he's very similar voice. But it's very good. And it's like it's fun. and it's slow. Like it really takes its time when it wants to take its time. There are
Mm,
shots where they're like incredibly slow zoom crawls in, whatever you call
mm.
that, slow zooms in and or slow zooms out. And but you're kind of just so into this, it's immersive, and it's like a painting. Every time it does that, it's kind of, you're looking at a painting, and you're just like watching. It's just slightly moving, like in Harry Potter or something.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole 2-for-1 shots thing was so cool, and it was like, because you see that you've seen so much stuff do like slow zoom outs and all that stuff, but they don't end in like an epic like Renaissance painting picture.
Yes,
Where
it's like a
it's like
good
this,
close-up shot, and then it
yeah,
zooms out into a beautiful wide painting.
and then like
And
every single thing is filled out, it's balanced, it has like the composition is perfect. And then you get, even though it's a single shot uncut, you get 2 shots out of it, and it feels like a cut almost, or like because of the dynamic movement.
I
Uh,
read that he went and looked through books and whatever at actual paintings of these from these eras, and tried to block shots to be almost exactly like some of these paintings.
Sick.
Um
Yeah,
and
you can see it. You could definitely see it because painterly is definitely what I would describe. But those wides after the zooms, 100%.
Here's one right here. The and then the other thing that is worthy to note about in the production is the lighting. It is all natural lighting. So every time you're indoors, it is those candles, all candle lit in the room. Kory, didn't you had some factoid about
Yes.
a lens
So
that
there's
he
a
used for this?
special Zeiss lens that was made, that Kubrick had made specifically for this movie. It was a point, for film, light through lens is measured in t stops, and photos it's f stops. So if I'm saying one or the other, they're effectively the same thing. So a normal, like what we would call a fast lens, which would be great for low light, would be like a T2 or a T18, where it's very shallow depth of field, but you can get a lot of light in. The lights that, or the lenses that were developed for the candlelight shots, is a 0.95 T 0.95, which is like like, for if you're using a normal portrait lens, you're talking millimeters is what your focus depth is. Uh, so like no one can move or else they're immediately out of focus. But what I liked on how they did this, they're shot with this lens, but it's all wide. It's a wide angle lens, which the wider the lens, the more things are in focus easier, and it's done so well. The only way that I could tell that it was just a like all natural light and with a crank though was, you could tell like in a modern movie when they do candlelight stuff, they don't let the candle flame get so nuclearly like highlight clipped, but in doing that, you end up with a very dark, moody scene still. This one, they don't give a fuck. Crank the fucking, or open the aperture up as wide as possible, and get that light. Let those candles go nuclear, as we would say. And but it's so cool because that's just like, that's how it is. That's how it would be lit. That's how the light would
Yeah, they
hit
want it to
everything.
look like how it would look like to your eye if you were
Yeah.
like sitting in this tavern or sitting at this dinner party in this mansion, and they have these the chandeliers with like 50 candles going at once. Me and Riss were talking about that. Like, so obviously servants have to do this, but if they ever want to use that room in the evening, they though they have to
See it prep.
replace those candles every single night it gets used.
Yep.
50 candles. Just like the
Insane.
sickeningly rich is like the third part of this movie, just to find out how sickeningly rich people were at this time, and in a time where there was a great disparity between being rich and poor. Um, but so yeah, I think we can get into the movie itself. The movie is about a man. Who starts as a boy, and we see his whole life.
This whole
Um,
bulge.
his whole balls. Is that what you said?
This whole, yeah, Redmond Berry. The whole first part of this movie is nothing but Redmond Berry's bulge. I said
The
it.
way his yeah,
Rewind it.
Riz said something about that
It.
too, about the way his pants were like
Yeah.
pulling. That it was
Yeah.
very.
Watch this movie.
It just might be the way that the pants were cut, like
It's
for a.
all dick outline.
So the guy who plays Redmond Barry, our lead, is Ryan O'Neal, and you at home, the folks at home, and I know him best for playing
Mindhunter.
the father. Stop. And the father and and the guy running for governor in Malibu's Most Wanted. So yeah, Bill Gluckman, I believe is his name. He does a really funny political commercial in the movie about when he's like playing basketball or something. I think I ripped it off for a school project once. Yeah. So I think Ryan O'Neal's performance, let me just get this out of the way. I think it's really good because he's really good at playing this like cocky fuck. Entitled fuck, I think is the best. He's a very entitled person, but also his Irish accent is very half-assed.
Oh, I didn't even know. I know he's supposed to be an Irishman, but I just thought he was doing a British accent.
No, it's supposed to be Irish, and you can hear him trying to do an Irish accent. It comes out on certain vowel sounds, but it is very half-assed. It's very much I'm American, and then I'm gonna sometimes talk with a slightly Irish, slightly English accent. But it doesn't matter. For some reason, it does not matter. Everyone else's accents are fine as far as I can tell. But I think it just works. It just works for Barry. Barry, how should we say this? Barry sucks as a person, but he seems to just keep kind of rolling into next phases of life. Like it doesn't really his terrible choices never fully catch up to him until they do. In the end, towards the end of the movie.
It's not like failing upwards. It's just being in the wrong place at the wrong time upwards. Does that make sense?
It's like he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, but then he's incredibly self-interested. He puts himself over he has no loyalty to anyone except for himself. And I think when he realizes that he will do what it takes to survive, and when his back is up against the wall, he rises to the occasion. In many points of this film, he gets into a bare knuckle boxing fight with this guy that is like twice his size, and he like shows this courage, and he is known as a cool guy in the military now after that. And then he performs well in battle, and but then he also leaves the battlefield just for fucking fun, and he eventually deserts and gets captured by the Prussian army, and they conscript him, and he does this heroic thing while he's working for them, and then is become a loyal hero to them. And it's just really interesting that it's like this rise and fall. Like he does see consequences for being a fucking piece of shit, but then he somehow is good for a little while, or behaves for a while just enough to become free, and do the things that he wants to do again. Yeah, it's very it's just great. It's just great. Because you're just like, oh fuck, whoa, oh, how's he gonna get out of this? How's he gonna get out of this one, old Barry? And he's very naive, but then he slowly does become very deceptive and manipulative of his own. Like in the beginning of the film, he gets robbed by these very polite highwaymen that mug him.
Extremely polite.
Is one of I think that's like a whole theme in the film. Me and Riss were talking about this. Is there's this air of sophistication and manners, and but in reality, this society is incredibly barbaric. People are killing each other.
Dead.
People are killing each other. People are fighting. People are fighting wars for nothing. The rich live in excess and opulence, and the poor live in shit. It's just awful.
In the second part of the movie, when he's telling his kid war stories, and the kid's just like, "Well, did you get to keep the severed heads?" What do you mean? No. They tell these kids about all these severed heads.
And he's exaggerating. These stories are definitely exaggerated. But
it's such a nonchalant thing.
It's just the disparity, and just there's manners, but everyone's just slime balls and doing scummy shit and fucking each other over. So Barry follows suit and becomes a backstabbing, lying criminal, essentially, that kind of slimes his way into high society. Does he ever get the title officially? I don't know if the movie was explicit if he does gain the title of being a highborn, I think he doesn't. I think he gets kind of
Well,
like manipulated,
he,
and then they
his
kind
mom,
of bleed him dry.
he brings his mom in, and then his mom starts getting in his ear about you need to become a lord, or else you're not getting any of her money.
Yeah. If she
None of this,
dies, you lose
you get
everything.
nothing. And so then he becomes obsessed with that. But then she, after the death of the kid, they both are just distraught, and mom ends up just running everything, and it's just like I can't remember if she's just giving shit away. I don't know. She fires the chaplain. I remember that.
Well,
So
that
much
doesn't
happens.
answer my question about does he actually become a lord or not.
I don't think so because they pay him off to leave and never return, and then they give him that annual salary.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
before that, that's the very end. Like
no, that's what
the
I'm saying. Like
lord
I don't.
part is like way before that. It's when he's like
No,
visiting
I
with
don't
that
think he gets
Lord
to.
Wendover, and he's spending a bunch of money,
Yeah.
and like he has those dinner parties, and it kind of like climaxes in Barry Bullingdon acting crazy at the music concert, and Barry trying to kill Bullingdon
Yeah,
in front of
because
everybody.
after that, the narrator's like all of his friends grew distant and everything. So
Yeah,
I
they
don't think he ever
caught.
got the bullshit.
Yeah, the wiki says he was cast out of polite society after that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Brian. Yeah. So then Barry shows kindness to only to really his son. And Brian,
Spoiled
who's the
brat.
one who's a Papa, can I have a horse, Papa? Which I know I feel like I've heard before, just like using the kid who says spoiled rich kid who says Papa a bunch. But yeah, Brian dies. So the only thing Barry loved, he spoiled, and pretty much the spoiling is what killed the kid.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, there's so much that happens in the story. I wanted to go ahead.
I was gonna say this is 2 movies worth of content in one movie. It is a lot.
Well, it does say part one. It's interesting that it is
Yeah.
split up into part one and part two, because like the first half is his rise, and then I feel like the second half is his fall.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
much happens in each section,
like in
though.
the
It's
first half
like,
is like he's on all these adventures and he's doing all these different things, and he's getting into trouble and then he's getting out of trouble, and it's very much I don't even know if you call it a hero's journey. But then it's like that. I think that's what's interesting is the length really gives it a different kind of structure narratively because it's so extended. Like you could
yeah,
have a traditional movie end, when he's a hero and he's on top. But
yeah,
instead we keep going and he flies too close to the sun, and just takes it all for granted, like what he's achieved. And by the end of it, he is childless, he is loveless, he's penniless, and he's missing a leg.
yep. Yeah.
So there are,
He's got the shit of every stick by the end of this movie because he spends the whole second half of the movie is just him spending money and banging chicks, and it's like,
Chia,
if you,
he's just terrible
yeah,
person. But the one we didn't really talk about this, but it is like a main motif of the film is duels, pistol duels,
yeah,
flintlock or whatever, pistol duels. And there's 3 of them in the film. The beginning, Barry's father, the very opening first shot of the film is Barry's father being killed in a duel over a horse. A little bit later, the movie opens with a young Barry who is seduced by his cousin, and he falls in love with his cousin, and she's going to be married to a British officer, and he challenges the man to a duel, and the family wants the man's money, so they manipulate the duel so that Barry wins and thinks that he's killed a man and has to run out of town because dueling is illegal at this time. And then in the end, Lord Bullingdon, the son of Countess Lyndon, the lady that he marries, shoots him in a duel. Which honestly, the first time I watched the final duel, it was very tense because I did not know how it was going to end up. Because I was like, this could go anyway. Like Barry could blow this kid's head off and be seen as a piece of shit. Lord Bullingdon could kill Barry. They could wound each other. Like I honestly thought that once the accidental firing went off for Lord Bullingdon, that Barry was gonna do what he did, and then they're like, okay, satisfied. Like
yeah. That's
that
what I
is a
thought.
thing. That is a thing. Like sometimes the dudes would challenge each other to duels, shoot over each other's heads, and then be like, okay, we're cool. For some reason they did that.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't do that. Lord Bullion shoots him in the leg, causing him to have to be in the shin, and it has to be amputated. And that's how the
That whole
film ends.
duel though is what I have a thing with is the first two duels is the men shoot at the same time. The final duel is they take turns, which whoever goes first on the or on the coin toss, they're obviously going to win the duel. Like especially if they aim for the face. Like I just thought it was
For
very
some reason
weird.
don't remember them shooting at the same time in the second duel.
The second duel they shoot at the same time because Barry's goes off slightly first before the other guy and hits, and the other guy shoots slightly high. But they happen at the same time. And the third duel, it's one at a time, and it's not addressed why. I just assume because they're in a different country now. It's just
I don't know. There's different rules though.
But
I do know that there are different rules. And those are two ways that you can do it. The take turn
But
way and the other way. So it's like Russian roulette because they're so inaccurate, you know.
Yeah.
That you know, it's nothing is for sure. Something could go wrong with the guns, which is what happens.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, dude. Bullington's fumbling with the gun.
He's so
Actually
nervous
fires
because he
it
thinks he's gonna die.
and throws up after
Oh, he's
he
a
fucking
coward.
does the shot.
He's a coward, but he faces it
Oh
and
man.
he ultimately
Yeah.
wins.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah,
Barry.
I thought he was gonna try to like back out or something, and no, he does it. So is there any other particular sections that you want to talk about as favorite parts? I like the Prussia section because I think I really like Captain
Yeah.
Pottsdorf. I think he's funny because he sees through Barry's bullshit until he doesn't anymore. I think that is something interesting. Is that
Yeah.
Pottsdorf is like, I'm on to you and all your bullshit, but when it came down to it, Barry won his trust and then manipulated him into his own getting his own freedom and money and whatever, working for the Chevalier.
Yeah, that was all cool. I like all the stuff with the gambling and all that. I like so much of the first part just because it is just an adventure film for the first half. And it's just, like when he steals right before he meets that officer, when he steals the gay officer couple that are taking the bath in the lake together, like professing their love and everything.
Yeah, that was an interesting scene.
That was super funny, like because I think it seemed like it's meant to be a comedic moment, and so,
Yeah.
and it's just funny, and he just steals all of his shit and just leaves and fakes being an officer, and there's just so many moments like that just like there's a bit of whimsical and like minor silliness to a lot of this, which I think keeps it fun and moving.
Yeah, I think
Long.
that's why I think that's what makes it good is that it is fun. Because I think people usually assume that a period piece is gonna be like kind of dry.
Yeah, that's how I'm one of those people. I normally do not like watching this era, like 17th and 1700, 1800 stuff. I normally don't like because I think it's going to be boring. But this is just not that. This is just like it's like a single person like buddy movie, if that makes sense. Like it's a nice adventure film, and then the second half more or less just becomes like a not a dark comedy, but just kind of because there's just so much bad shit happening to this guy, but it's just not presented. It doesn't feel like it's that bad. You know, does that make sense? Because I guess his perspective is just he's just so carefree, even though all the bad things are sitting in the. You can tell
he's like really
sitting
confident and entitled, but he keeps like
Yeah.
his confidence kind of carries him through to the next thing, to the next like adventure. I wanted to bring up something because the first time I watched this, I did not, I wasn't aware because I had not seen this other movie, but this time it kind of reminded me. I saw some parallels to Citizen Kane, in terms of like it is a biopic, you know, kind of a fictional biopic of of this whole man's life, not beginning to end, but like from a young man to pretty much dead, near death. And I don't know if this is like meant to be. I do see it a little bit as like a 18th century Citizen Kane kind of story. He's not rich to start. He's on or the orphan thing or whatever, but he's not lowborn either. Like he's kind of like in the middle and works his way to be in this big shot and then kind of falls there's a lot of the scenes at the end with these giant rooms with nothing in them and all the paintings on the wall and just buying shit for nothing. It really reminded me of Kane building Xanadu and being in like the scenes where it was just like these giant dark rooms with one huge chair in it or something ridiculous, a comically huge painting or a comically huge chair. I don't know.
But I understand when they started hemorrhaging money, why didn't they just start selling all the like? Because then you could have kept the house, at least. And
yeah, no idea.
Decorations could be replaced, but I get maybe it's a pride thing. Who knows?
I just like you're hoarding stuff, like your stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you see anything like that, or do you?
I didn't think of it until you said it, but now that you've said it, yeah, that whole end, like once they've realized they're broke and poor, and they're showing all those establishing shots of all the different rooms that are just empty, like the 100%.
Well, like they're not empty because they're poor. That's just like
no,
rich people
I mean,
back. Yeah, they have giant rooms for no reason. All this extra space.
I just meant like empty of people. They're just filled rooms of shit, but empty of any like hope or people or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly how like the end of Citizen Kane is. I don't think I would have thought about it. Bring it up, but that's a very interesting.
And just like I don't know, definitely Kane it's different because he's actually a good person in the first part of the movie. Like he gets slowly corrupted by his wealth and greed, whereas Barry is always a piece of shit. He's a cousin fucker to start. He's a cousin fucker to start, and then he goes around the world fucking people's wives, and
Oh my god, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, he is fighting that lady's husband in the war.
No, they're on the same side.
No, I thought they were on different sides.
No, the Prussians she's German, and the Prussians were on the same side of the British. They were against the Swedes, the Russians, and the French.
Gotcha. I thought she was. I took that as like
7 years war.
Banged some other general's wife, like from the other army.
No, it's even worse because they're allies.
Oh my god.
Yeah, if anything, you could say it's part of the war, fucking each other's wives.
The narrator was just like, but little did he know that she opens her heart to all men.
He's not the first, and he won't be the last.
He won't be the last. Yeah.
I thought that was very funny too, because it was like, man, is Barry like this smooth motherfucker that just like stumbles his way into pussy? But actually, no, not really. Apart from
just lucked out.
He just gets lucky or just finds the right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time. That's kind of like this whole movie, and it's very. It honestly, like, I mean, he makes these decisions, but it just feels like he's on a ride, and it's kind of just getting pulled to the next thing. And he makes the most of that, especially when he becomes a gambler. That's when he's like when he's at its peak, right before he cucks. Oh yeah, how about the line from the Sir Lyndon, the old man?
Yeah, when
he's like I'd rather be known as a cuckold than a fool. I thought that was really funny.
That was good.
But yeah, is there anything else that you want to touch on with Barry Lyndon?
It's so big. I'm just having trouble finding like the little the moments, but it's so much happens. But I don't know. I mean, like I like how the ending is just like her signing the card, and you just have to read the card that they're just paying him $500 a year. And she's just like sadly fucking signing it off because she's like stuck. It's her alimony payment essentially for the life.
That's what they said. Oh, I don't know if we did mention that the screenplay is adapted as an adapted screenplay on a novel by William Makepeace Thackeray called The Luck of Barry Lyndon.
Luck. The misfortunes of Barry Lyndon. Sequel book. I don't know. There's so much happens. It's a fun movie though. This is like I did not, unlike a lot of these like other Kubrick films and a lot of other long movies. I didn't think this was a slow burn in that regard.
No, there is slow moments in terms of the shots holding on things, like the slow zoom shots. There's just like stuff like that where they really like hang on something. But it really just moves other than that. I want the music, the score of this is awesome. Like I want to use some of this score in a D&D, like an aristocratic quest in a D&D campaign where you're like in a noble court or something, and it's, I don't know, that dun 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 dun. I was just like, is there another, like, maybe do they use this music in that one episode of Always Sunny where they play that crazy game and like the piano plays like in between the rounds?
It's been a while since I've watched any Always Sunny.
Yeah, you gotta watch things.
I've seen.
I guess
watch
you're
a lot
watching
of things
movies.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of TV shows anymore, but I've seen the first 5 seasons of Always Sunny, but it was in college, and I haven't.
Yeah, you don't
seen
watch TV.
I do sometimes. I get into stuff. I'll be on a hankering for something. Lately, it's just been I've been trying to find a new good anime. Time has gone.
Oh, I can suggest thousands.
I know. I just haven't had time to even start anything. But
yeah, all right. Well, let's score this bad boy. It's pretty much. I'm gonna go first. I think this is pretty flawless in the cinematography department. It's obviously pretty flawless in terms of costume design, art direction, because it's a really well put together period piece. The score I just praised as being amazing. Everything really works about this movie, and I don't have any critiques. And the fact that it's made a 3-hour period piece, this good it makes it even more special. I'm giving it a 5.
Wow, I mean, I knew you were gonna give it that, but it's 2 5s in one episode. That's what's groundbreaking.
Yeah, well, when you do greats, that's what happens. I do 2 5s in maybe 7 Samurai and Ran.
Did you?
I don't know, maybe 5s? I did. Maybe I gave one of those.
I know you gave Ran a 5 for sure.
I also think that Ran, there's some ways that the shots are set up in this movie that kind of remind me of how, like, the big wides, and there are some slow zooms in Ran too, just like this.
I'm torn because, like, I agree with everything you said for your reasoning for giving it a 5, but I think 2000. I don't know if it's just because I'm into 2001, but I liked it better. Just I think it's more my genre of things. But this, I don't see a reason not to give it a 5, but I just feel like because I didn't like it as 2001.
I mean, you can. I don't know. I mean, this is meant to be what you think the film is, not what you like. It's not. I know,
but it's
thing.
Like, I know, but it's I don't know.
You have to be objective. You will have a hard time being objective.
Well, that's hard. It's impossible for any true critic or reviewer of anything.
No, but you can set aside biases when you know that you have them, like towards a certain genre, towards a certain style. Like, I have biases against things, obviously. It's not a big deal. You don't have to give it a 5. But I'm just saying,
I agree.
If that is your issue, then that
I don't have a reason to not give it a 5, even though my heart says 4.5.
And you can score 2 things a 5 and like one better. It doesn't mean that they're equally good. It doesn't mean that they can't have like a gap of some kind. Like,
that's true.
It's just like, I don't know. But if it doesn't, but also, like, some people need to be blown away to give something a 5.
I think I'm like that kind of thing.
But this does blow me away. I think because of how I'm into this movie in a genre that I would not be into. I'm this into it, It's this long. And I love every second of it. I'm hanging on it. It could have been 4 hours. It could have been a Snyder. I want the Snyder I want the Lyndon cut.
Yeah. The Kubrick cut of
the Barry cut.
Lyndon.
That's I think enough to be said,
From going off that, I think I'm gonna go 4.5 just for 2001 blew me away. This I really liked, but I couldn't see. I don't know if I could watch it anytime soon.
Oh, I could watch it again tomorrow.
And I think that for that reasoning, it's a 4.5 for me. But man, is it good? Man, it's surprisingly good. I knew nothing about this going in, and the moment I found out it was a period piece, I'm not gonna lie, I went, oh. god damn. And then I saw the runtime and went, oh, god damn. But no, this is pleasantly surprising and a really good movie.
Oh, we have to mention one of the best iconic scenes in the movie, and I'm reminded because I have the letterbox page up, and it's got the picture of it. Is when he has achieved, he's married the countess, and he's now, powerful rich man or whatever, and he's they're riding in a stagecoach or whatever, and he's smoking a pipe, and she asks him to stop smoking. Can you please stop smoking for a little bit? And he doesn't answer. He looks at her and just blows a big old hit in her face.
Which is so wild because right before that, the narrator is just like how they were inseparable, so in love or whatever. And as soon as they're married, immediately turns
He
heel.
got what he wanted. Yep, he got what he wanted because he's an opportunist and he didn't actually love her. He's a piece of shit. Piece of shit, Barry Lyndon. That's if you like watching movies about a piece of shit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Surprised there isn't a musical of this made because this seems like a perfect musical content. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
Like a Spam-A-Lot style, like comedy musical. Like
yeah,
I could totally. Maybe that's you. Maybe you be the one, the music man.
Is there a genre? A period? Just call it a period drama film. It's just funny because it's not like a laugh out loud thing, but there's so many outrageous things. You're just oh my god! I scream oh my god and point at the screen so many times in this movie. Like oh what a fucking wild man! What an asshole! What a piece of shit, Barry Lyndon. But all right.
Yeah, you could totally Book of Mormon this, and yeah, that's the lead song. What a piece of shit, Barry Lyndon. That's the opening song of the fucking movie or of the musical.
But all right, I think that wraps it up for this episode. I don't think we know what we're doing next. Do we?
No.
So that's okay. We got some time to figure it out. We got a little bit of a backlog recorded, which is nice for us. So keep that in mind. I'll try to put the record dates in the descriptions. Make sure you follow us, Best Boys Film Pod. You can follow me at Slob Thomas, him at Kory with a Story with a K. You got anything you want to plug?
Not at the moment. I got nothing crazy going on. Just check out the old Instagram that I never post to at Kory with a Story with a K.
I'm trying to think if there's anything obvious that I want to do, but we'll talk about it. We got a few weeks, so we can think about it over the next few days and get back. I've actually restarted. I think I mentioned it last episode. My A24 binge of trying to finish seeing every single one. So I know that Men is coming out soon, which is a new one, and X I think is already out. But those I don't think are going to be big enough. Men is made by Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina. So I was debating on, but
I heard
that Men's not that good.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say that the director I was working with this past week really hyped it up because he loves Ex Machina and Annihilation. So he was like,
I did really like Annihilation too. I thought it was better than people said it was.
Yeah, I never saw it, and I didn't see it because I had heard it got bad. Like I'd heard it wasn't that good. It was reviewed poorly. So, but I was talking to this director when I had mentioned that I thought it. I hadn't seen it because I heard it didn't do well. He was like, completely just tried to convince me to give it a chance and watch it.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
See ya.